All right, guys, how's it going? Welcome to OverVolted, the podcast where everything's made up and the leaks don't matter. That's right, they don't matter, just like Intel finally making 10 nanometer CPUs. Just doesn't matter. We are accompanied by Jim today.
All right, guys.
As well as Matthew.
Hey.
And we have Alex.
Hey, everybody. How's it going?
Today we're going to talk about some of the leaks that we've heard about. We got the B550 motherboards. We have the G14 that Matthew has been reviewing. We also have some leaks about Intel. We have the Intel quarterly results for Q1, so that'll be interesting. And then we have a sponsored gaming review that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and dig right into this. Matthew, you want to start us off?
Okay, so this is old news by now. But Ryzen 3 Zen 2 is a thing. They're quad cores. And we had thought earlier that this was going to be Matisse 2. We're pretty sure it's not now. There was like a stretch of 3 days where we were like, yes, we got something really cool. And then we were like, this ain't it, chief.
After we went public with this information about Matisse 2, we were corrected by one of our sources saying, no, this isn't Matisse 2. So we're still waiting for the information about what Matisse 2 actually is.
Yeah, I mean, it made so much sense. We're told about this new thing.
The thing here is, right, when I'm getting leaks from these guys, like, and remember, before we even talked about Matisse 2, nobody knew about these 3100s and 3300Xs, yeah?
Yeah.
There was nothing said about that. And I got this leak from a guy who gives me a lot of good stuff, especially revolving around the motherboards. And we did say it's going to be the middle of June when we see these B550s. And we got a little bit more information. But the same guy said, there's something called Matisse 2 there, but he said it was only one CPU. It's very likely that the wires have got crossed somewhere. This is one chip, obviously, the 3100 and the 3300X. It's one chip. But it's obviously 3100's cut down. I can't give you the exact details on exactly what it is because I did sign an NDA with AMD for some reason. I don't know why I even bothered signing this NDA because it was just a complete waste of time. The follow-up information that I got, I just can't give everybody the whole information because I've gone ahead and signed this NDA, and I don't think I'm going to bother doing it in future, to be honest, because I didn't gain anything out of signing this NDA with AMD. I just don't know why I even bothered doing it. But I did, and the information basically that I got afterwards said, this is not actually Matisse 2. I don't even know if Matisse 2 exists or not. What I do know is that this source is extremely good, and he's given me a lot of information, especially regarding motherboards, which was accurate. I mean, we said middle of July in our previous article.
June.
Was it June we said?
Yeah, we said we said mid-June.
Yeah, mid-June.
And then it was confirmed June 16th.
Yeah, that is correct. And I do just want to point out that before we even mentioned Matisse 2, there was nothing, nobody knew anything about the 3100 or the 3300X. So this was a surprise part. And we heard something, Matisse 2, probably not that accurate, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, we'll wait and see.
Well, maybe this is Matisse 2, but Matisse 2 isn't really the right name. That could be it. Because to me, it was like, we learned about Matisse 2, and suddenly there's a leak about Ryzen 3 Zen 2. And I was like, it's got to be this. It's a new die. It's a new die, of course. But then it was like, well, and then that leak slide came out, and I was like, okay, it's definitely not it.
I mean, we've already seen the slide. We can talk about that because video cards already outed it, yeah?
We won't say if it's real or not, but we are strongly considering it.
Well, with the watermark on it, I think we're strongly considering it. I feel bad for whoever Vive K is, but...
Wait. Someone leaked the slide and they forgot to remove their name. That's not very smart.
I don't know why.
It's from oneindia.co.in, so...
That's not very smart. Yeah, this looks pretty... I didn't even know there was a watermark on it. I just saw like a thumbnail version.
If you remember, I was talking about in our podcast that I thought it would be them just disabling a full CCX and doing a 4+0, so...
Yeah, well, we did get that part right.
We did have a little bit of concern over whether they could do a 4+0, and we're thinking maybe it was a 2+2, and they just disabled part of the L3 cache. And they did disable part of the L3 cache, so that's surprising. That's the first time I've seen them.
Did they? It doesn't look like they did.
They must have done. How else did they get one CCX?
8 meg per CCX. And this is the first time I've heard of them disabling L3 cache, so they must have a little bit more control over that than I thought, because we've only had a full unaltered L3 cache before.
And obviously the 3100 is going to be $99 and the 3300X is $119, was it? So basically $20 more. Effectively, this is an 8MB L3 cache CPU, the 3100, because this other 8MB, it's just not going to get used enough. There's going to be a fairly big difference, I think, in the performance level of these two chips. Not huge, but enough that the $20, it's going to be worth it. And I actually want to talk about that because, this would have been great, this 3300X. Had it been $99, people would have been losing their minds over this. But that extra $20, obviously they're going to have zero competition at that price range anyway. And it's going to be tough for me to really slam these CPUs.
Well, Jim, you're saying competition, but the thing is AMD's having a hard time beating themselves.
Yeah, honestly, like they're really arguing with themselves with the 1600 AF. I don't know anybody right now that has bought an i3 or has even considered an i3 at that price, at the price point that it's at.
This 3300X is going to be better in gaming by quite a distance.
I don't know.
I think it will be. I think it will be.
I think it will be.
I don't think it'll be worth it.
Whether or not it's worth it because you're losing the 2 cores and the extra 4 threads, I don't know. Honestly, by this point, I'm at the stage where I'm thinking these, like the 1600 is an old CPU now. And okay, the 1600 AF is 12 nanometers. It's a bit better, but yeah, I'm actually not sure if I would rather have a 1600 AF or would I rather have the 3300X. I just don't know.
I think we should wait to see the gaming benchmarks or the CPU performance.
3300X is going to win every single game, I guarantee it. Every game.
And that's the point of waiting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you guys will probably see that in a few weeks over here.
Oh, hint, hint, wink, wink, yeah?
Oh yeah, it may well be the case that we may have a review of these CPUs at some point in the future.
I mean, I may be using a 2600 to get some preliminary benchmarks right now. I may not.
Right, yeah.
It's all kind of up in the air.
Yeah, interesting.
Wait, so do we have a review or don't we? I'm confused.
Did that one just go way over your head there, Matthew?
You should probably check our website on the day of release.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
Good idea. That'd be a good idea, yeah. But otherwise, looking at the parts, I think, Matthew, you kind of nailed it when you said, why did they even exist,
Yeah, I don't think it should.
I mean, I think for the end user, it'll be a nice option. And I think for people who want something that's cheap that they can run esports games on, I think this will be honestly fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But why would they do that versus just running an APU?
Alex, I get where you're coming from, but quad cores are dead and you're wrong.
They are, listen, as much as I want them to die, $99 makes people really happy.
Yeah, it does.
Or $120 makes people really happy.
To be fair, the 1600 AF is actually only available around about the $115 mark. This $85 thing seems to be an old wives' tale. I've never seen it at that price.
I've seen it at Amazon.
Oh,
here in
it's
the
gone.
States, though.
It used to be.
It went out of stock, but it was that price. It sold out quick. Everyone jumped on that thing. That was a nice price for that thing.
Yeah.
I guess maybe it does have a reason to exist.
Possibly.
Well, it's a 6-core, mind you, not a 4. So the 1600 AF had a reason. And if we see Matisse 2, I'm just throwing it out there. If we see Matisse 2, I think it's gonna be something akin to the 1600 AF, but for a 26 or something.
I think this is Matisse 2, and it wasn't a new die. It was just a new CPU.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Nicknamed it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So moving on to the next one, Matthew.
Well, the motherboard. You want to talk about the?
You want to talk about the motherboard as well?
Yeah.
I mean, our article says pretty much everything there is to say. It had a delay for the launch because the issue of the BIOS being flashed, requiring the power supply to be unplugged from the wall or flip the switch on it in order for the flash to be successful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty tall order to say in big bold letters on the screen. Now be sure to unplug your computer from the wall, but not until the flash is done.
Could you if AMD had not caught that, this probably would have been one of the biggest hardware controversies in a very long time.
Yeah. Oh, it would have been a disaster.
This would have been way bigger than that RX 480 thing.
Oh, yeah.
But here's the thing. They would have caught this anyway because do you know how many revisions of the BIOS they go through? Well,
yeah.
They probably ran into this on accident. Why is it not updating? What the?
What? We have a paperweight now. Get Lisa Sue on the line.
Well, it wasn't a paperweight. They would just be not able to boot until they finally unplugged it from the wall, and then they'd walk it over to their neighbor's desk or whatever. Hey, can you figure out what's wrong with this? They'd plug it in and turn it on, and it worked. It's like, whoa.
And then after the third guy that complains about this, they'd realize that you're not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stories that I hear from the motherboard guys, it's always the same. It's like AMD motherboard guys, the BIOS guys. It was funny because, I used to be fairly close to MSI at one point. I had a very good relationship with them. And MSI would blame AMD, and AMD would blame MSI.
They deserve
just
each
constantly
other.
blaming each other, yeah. But I've got other contacts in the motherboard guys now, and they just say, the way AMD deals with it, the whole program for BIOS and motherboard, it's nowhere near what Intel is doing. And I think it's a source of frustration for the motherboard guys. Let's put it that way.
Well, Intel does have the funds.
I mean, they sure put out some great boards this gen with the X570 stuff. The X570 stuff was really, really nice.
Yeah.
With the exception of a few boards.
Well,
Well, if you noticed, it was pretty much the same boards that they had been giving Intel this whole time.
Yeah.
They just finally decided to give AMD the same treatment.
G14?
Yep. Tell us a little bit about your new laptop.
So I bought a G14. It arrived, I think it's about 11 days now. I love it. I've been using it a lot. But I know something strange with the battery life. It's that certain things would make the battery life become real shit. Normally, the battery life is great. As you can see on my benchmark, it gets like 380 minutes or 6 hours and 20 minutes when doing 4K YouTube playback, which is really good. And that's at max brightness. By simply opening MSI Afterburner, you can halve your battery life down to like around 3 hours. Or if you install the new AMD driver, like the one for the 4900H, it'll drop it by about an hour and a half. And I figured out why that happens. It's something to do with their control panel or the overlay. So if you install the new AMD driver, then just kill all the Radeon processes in the background, the battery life becomes normal again. And the reason why the battery life tanks in the first place is because all these things make the RTX 2060 in it like wake up and run at like 300 megahertz instead of like 0. So it's a very weird thing.
Question, Matthew. Why are you even bothering with MSI Afterburner when you've got Walkman and it's a perfectly good piece of software?
Well, it didn't ship with the new drivers, which I believe is tied into the new driver thing. The old drivers, it's like called Radeon Settings Lite, and it's sort of like the old panel, but it doesn't have Relive or any like overlay or anything. So you can't use Wattman with that. You can use it with the new ones, but having the drivers open will turn down battery life. Not as much as MSI Afterburner, but if somebody were to say install the new drivers and then do all their benchmarking, including battery benchmarking, then they would be like, oh wow, the battery life isn't as good as everybody says it is.
You remember there was a point where Unwinder, who is the guy that created Afterburner, he had a bit of a falling out with AMD at one point, and he kind of threw his toys out the pram and he said, I will no longer be supporting AMD hardware with this. I don't know exactly what happened after that, but...
I don't think this is an AMD issue, actually. I think... Or it might not be solely limited to AMD
It'll be
software.
AMD's fault, I guarantee you. It'll be AMD's fault.
I don't know, because the problem is that the RTX GPU is waking up, and it's coming out of power saving mode.
What it might be is that the Afterburner being on turns the GPU on, and it sets it into one of the power states rather than off.
Yeah.
I tried to set all of the like Radeon background processes onto integrated graphics. That helped battery life when the control panel was open, like the actual UI, but that did not prevent battery life from going down when it was closed. With the control panel open, I think you would see similar battery life to MSI Afterburner, or even worse.
So wait, obviously the AMD, the CPU itself has got the graphics, it's an APU,
yes.
But it's also got the 2060, wasn't it?
Yeah, RTX 2060 Max.
How is this actually working regarding the drivers? Do you have both the AMD and the NVIDIA control panel?
Yes, you have both.
Right. I've only got my NVIDIA card in right now, so I can't actually pull up the AMD one. Obviously, when you've got two different sets of graphics drivers there, there's always going to be room for something going wrong. I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh and blaming it on AMD. However, they need to get this stuff fixed.
They might be able to fix it, though. It might be like an Asus issue where like there's some kind of weird driver conflict going on. There is simply a reason why the G14 ships with the older drivers from 2019.
You tend to find that they will ship something that is stable and works.
Yeah.
And the new stuff is going to break a lot.
That too.
Obviously, I would just go with the drivers that it ships with because they've done the testing on that and that they know.
There's one slight problem with that, Jim. The G14 drivers that it ships with are not available on the website. And that's important because the drivers that are available on the website don't include a control panel. So you can't change anything, which means you can't turn on FreeSync because it's through the AMD control panel, not the NVIDIA control panel.
Ah, right.
To guarantee that FreeSync works, you have to install the new drivers if you've gotten rid of the old ones because the old ones aren't on their website. It's crazy. So Frank Azor did notice my article, so hopefully they get that fixed soon.
I noticed on Twitter that he mentioned it and he said thank you for the testing, so that's good. Hopefully they'll have a look at it.
Yeah, I also tweeted at him when I told him I figured out why the new drivers break it, and hopefully he saw that. He didn't like it, so I don't know if he did. I hope he did, though. Yeah. Because it might save him a few minutes.
I'm sure they'll figure it out, too.
But that was pretty much that for the G14. It was a good test, actually, and it's nice to see stuff like this. I enjoy it when I see you guys doing stuff like this on the website, something that's a little bit different, and you should do more of these kind of things, especially when it points out that maybe you're getting something that you didn't bargain for, because obviously the G14, it's a fantastic laptop.
Yes,
but,
it's great.
Yeah, you want to get the battery life mixed with it as well, though.
So the next one we have leaks.
This is old. This is old, by the way, because we didn't do a podcast last week.
This is another article from you, Matthew, if you want to go over it quickly.
Well, in case you missed it, one of our favorite leakers, Rogame, found out that there were more Cannon Lake CPUs with more cores. He found 6-core CPUs, 8-core CPUs, and 1 dual-core CPU that had working graphics. So these are like really, really early engineering samples. And this was probably the point where Intel was like, Cannon Lake will never work out. But it's really interesting. It goes up to 8 cores, and this is probably a mainstream CPU. So imagine if everything had gone to plan with Intel, they had this in 2016, Ryzen 1000 would have been in a tough spot.
Or it would have been an awful lot cheaper, I guess, which is probably more like the thing. But yeah, you're right. It would have been in a tough spot had Intel been able to get those clock speeds up and get these 6 and 8 core CPUs out. Interesting thing about this was I was actually talking to Charlie from Semi-Accurate about it. Very briefly, just on Twitter. We sent each other a couple of private messages. And he maintains that, from his knowledge, there was never any 6 or 8 core Cannon Lake parts. They did plan on it, but they never even had silicon. But according to these leaks, you have to say, well, did they have silicon? They must have had it. What else could it be? Mm-hmm. So Charlie says he's going to have a ask around, ask his sources if he can find out any more about that. The sources I have within Intel probably can't tell me anything like that.
I mean, they had to have figured out how feasible this was. So they had to have made... Like, did we really think they only made dual cores and they stopped there? Like, I think they probably would have gone up to 8.
It may well have been that these 6 and 8 core parts were just like furnaces, yeah? I mean, looking at how bad 10 nanometers is.
Also, this is Palm Cove. So if they wanted to test like the new Cove cores, they would have had to test it with Cannon Lake first. And they want to make Cove CPUs with more cores, up to 8.
It's definitely an interesting what if, yeah? What if, they had got this figured out, but obviously, given the state of their the dual core where they had to disable half the graphics, I mean, 8 cores with graphics, there's no way that was yielding, even like back a couple of years ago.
No, yeah, the yielding has to be a real big issue for them. That probably was one of the reasons why they looked at this and just didn't give it a second look.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been yielding so bad that they didn't even consider launching it. But I think they have had the parts. They've taped out, they've came back from the fabs, they've run a couple of benchmarks and said, we can't yield this, let's not bother with it.
Yeah.
And that's been the story for the past 3-4 years, unfortunately.
It's really unfortunate, honestly.
Well, it is, because we can laugh about it, but then again, we can now look at the prices that AMD are charging. $750 for a 3950X, $500 for a 3900X. I mean, it's funny, yeah? In a way, it's funny because Intel are huge and it's good to see them failing some ways, especially because of their history. But when you look at it from the consumer perspective right now, this has not really been good for us. Yeah, no. AMD's prices, it's not been that good for us. And the biggest problem is Intel just continues to make money selling 14 nanometer parts. And that'll lead us on nicely to the next article. Over at AnandTech, Intel reports Q1 2020 earnings, another strong quarter for both client and data center. Now, $19.8 billion for the first quarter of 2020. That was only $400 million below their their quarter four of last year. Operating income of $7 billion. That operating income is more than AMD's entire revenue last year, by the way. This is profit, basically. Or, well, they've got net income here of 5.7.
People aren't joking when they say they got deep pockets.
And they just keep on getting deeper, yeah? That's the thing.
Yep.
Intel's pockets just continue to get deeper every single time.
But the problem with Intel is that they got there by not advancing, because new nodes are expensive and making new products is expensive, and they're not doing that. But the thing is, what they're gaining right now, they're going to have to lose at some point, because this is not sustainable.
You would think it isn't sustainable, but I mean, they've been, we talked about it last podcast, 6 or 7 years on 14 nanometers, and yet they continue to make more money. No other company in the world that I can think about would be able to make this kind of money constantly with such a failed portfolio as what Intel has.
I would argue that they can make so much money because they haven't done anything, because they've cut down.
There is a factor there, yeah. I mean, obviously their margins have improved because they are still selling a ton of 14 nanometer product. And that node is like cheap.
Which is very mature at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and this is even with all of their slashing of prices, especially in the Xeon range, where they were making oodles of margin.
However, they did probably, that's not really going to be a major factor in this month, or this quarter revenue, but it may well be a factor in the next quarter, which is why, I mean, the stock took a bit of a pasting that lost about 5 or 6%, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Because the outlook wasn't quite so good.
Well, they withheld guidance. They didn't provide a full year of guidance.
Whole year guidance they withheld, yeah. It's interesting that Intel would do that.
Now, if you look at the numbers, look at the data center group revenue. They're at $7 billion. They're up 43% from this same quarter last year.
It's absolutely unbelievable. 43% increase in revenue. This product portfolio.
Yeah, that tells you that either there's a demand for performance or there's a effect from Spectre and Meltdown.
They have had a massive increase in prices as well, and data center just keeps on buying more and more Intel.
Well, it's a lot easier to plug a hole with the same hardware than it is to roll out a completely different CPU architecture into your data center.
What would you say, Kirk? I mean, obviously you work in data center and you know an awful lot more about it than most people. What would you say, percentage-wise, data centers are actually patching these mitigations? Are they all doing it, or would you say maybe half are?
I would say that most data centers that provide public cloud services or untrusted compute are likely patching this extensively.
Right. And they must be losing like more than half the performance.
They probably aren't losing half. It's certain niche scenarios that are going to lose huge amounts of performance. So they might be trying to stratify their environment to have things that are impacted, such as storage and whatnot, not be patched, but be on separate resources than the ones that manage compute for untrusted platforms.
Right.
But if you look at data centers nowadays, you have hybrid clouds, you have leasing of different things, like all of the VSP providers out there, those are all going to have to be patched, because you're basically giving a Linux box to somebody to do whatever they want with.
Right.
Or in some cases, a Windows box. There are VSPs that do that. But you give them any ability to run code, and you're going to have to be patched. There's just no way around it. It's just too leaky otherwise.
Yeah.
But also, I don't think AMD is ready to fill the shoes that Intel has.
They're nowhere near ready.
Yeah, TSMC can't provide all of their resource that they need.
And not just about that, but I think AMD is really afraid of pushing Intel too hard. Because when that happens, then you get the mid-2000s again. If you threaten Intel too hard, then they're like, okay, well, we got to go all in. We have to make sure that we don't lose our partners. We have to make sure that AMD is absolutely crushed again.
You know, on this, kind of on this topic, obviously we've been talking a lot about Milan and Zen 3. I got an email from an incredibly good source recently who said Milan is expected at the end of 2020. We weren't going to talk about this in the podcast, but I've decided just to throw it in. And he said that mildly interesting was that Milan is actually on the roadmap for this company, this OEM, arriving in the first quarter of 2021. And you can believe it. If this person's telling me this, then this is what it is. And the caveat is that this was a redacted product map, so it looks like they're expecting to refresh their Rome offerings to Milan in the first quarter of 2021. But it does mean that it will probably still launch in the fourth quarter of 2020.
Well, we saw with Rome when it came out, there was cloud providers and special partners that were running this CPU in January, and we didn't get it until July or August for normal businesses. So
it probably, yeah. I mean, it's interesting because if this OEM is talking about refreshing the first quarter of 2021, then it must be coming at least fourth quarter 2020. Because the HPC guys are going to want it.
Cloud providers, HPC, the Microsofts and Amazons of the world, basically.
This source speculated that said that either Milan is going to be a monster of a CPU and worthy of throwing their resources at it, or perhaps they did have a supply issue with Rome. And then they went on to say that maybe I'm reading too much into it, and perhaps it's just that this company has realised that their server products are beginning to lag behind their competitors. I can't mention the competitors either, because then obviously it would narrow down what this company was. That was information I got on that. Milan could be earlier than I was expecting, but it's certainly, if this company is going to have it in the first quarter of 2021, then it must be launching fourth quarter 2020.
So we have Legit Reviews, who has put out a Intel sponsored, and they called it right out in the title, so kudos for that, a top 50 Steam games benchmark. And they just took the top 50 games, ran it through the i9 9900K and AMD's 3950X. They did something that I was actually shocked. They put 3733 RAM in these systems. So they gave AMD the best possible footing right where their optimization is for their RAM. They didn't go and stick 3200 in it or something like that. But there is a few qualms that we have with these benchmarks. First off, they didn't give us any of the 99 percentile frames. They only gave us an average frames per second. Not even a median of runs. They just gave us their average FPS.
I mean, that could have just been for time-saving purposes, or maybe...
Graph space, perhaps?
Graph space is what I was going to say, Kirk, yeah, because...
Some websites, too, have been doing average frame rate, and Legit Reviews has been around a long time.
2002.
To be fair, I do average as well.
I've been doing averages and either 0.1 percentiles or 99th percentiles since I started, but there are a lot of places that just do average, min, and max, or just averages. A lot of places are just sort of set in the way that they do things, and they've been doing them forever, so they just continue to do it that way. So I'll give him a bit of room there on that.
And we did look at some of their previous benchmarks, and there are some that show maximum and minimum FPS, which are also very bad to do. You want to do percentiles. And then anything that has a built-in benchmark, they just provide the FPS or the minimums if it's presented as well.
I mean, this is a time-saving thing, yeah, because, I mean, benchmarking, Alex, you know all about it. It's a pain in the arse, let's be honest, benchmarking.
Yeah, you can, in a CPU review that you do, so like the Ryzen reviews that I did for launch, those took me about, I want to say anywhere from 30 to 50 hours to get done between systems, getting all the testing done, data's bad, making sure, retesting stuff, and then going and making the graphs and going through them and inputting all the data. Although, I mean, with some of this stuff, you already have the Excel files ready, so you just have to input the data and make sure the graphs work properly.
Yeah.
But it's still time intensive.
Yes.
With CPU reviews, you have to craft a much better type of methodology than GPUs, because GPUs just scale. It doesn't matter if you test at 4K or 1080p. Well, it might matter if you test at 1080p. But basically, no matter the settings you test at, unless it's something like Hairworks, you're going to get the same margins pretty much every single time, no matter if the frame rate's high or low.
Generally, yeah.
Yeah, generally. But CPUs, they don't scale. They never scale. You won't ever get a game and then upgrade your CPU and then get like 50% more frames unless you were like seriously bottlenecked. So
Oh, you mean
So, like,
like
the way
running an i3 with a 2800 or something? Or a 2080?
or like a Core 2 Duo.
This is my problem with this sponsored thing. And look, I also agree. Yeah, they were upfront about it right from the start. Said it's sponsored by Intel, and they have gone ahead and benched the top 50 Steam games, which a lot of people say, these are the most played games, so why wouldn't you do it? But okay, they've also gone with 1080p, which, as they pointed out, 65% of people are still on 1080p. However, this is with a 2080 Ti. I think that if you look at the number of people who have 2080 Ti's alone, it would be nowhere near 65%. Most people
Let's go check that out.
Can you actually check that?
Yeah, they have the Steam hardware survey.
By graphics card? I don't think you can select by graphics card.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
Here's the thing, though, that I want to say while Matthew's looking that up. There are ways to bias your report without looking like you're being biased by having some selection bias. In this case, the top 50 Steam games. Well, top 50 Steam games, the reason they sell so many of them is because so many people can play them. But how do you get as many people that can play them? Everyone has lower end hardware, 2060s or 4-core CPUs, and they're going to use those old systems, those lower systems. They're not going to be concerned about any of this stuff. They're probably having a hard time hitting the frame rates for any of the non-esport games.
I would say that I was surprised looking through the list, the amount of games that were not like that, but still, it's true that there were games that could run on a potato. Rocket League was up there and games like that.
I mean, what's War Thunder, for Pete's sake? I mean, they put Wallpaper Engine in here just to get a count of 50. Football Manager 2020?
Wallpaper Engine, yeah.
They didn't test it, though, to be fair. Go ahead.
I have the market share for 2080 Ti. Does anybody want to guess what the percentage is?
The market share?
Yeah, for the 2080 Ti.
Yeah, 1.5.
3. We'll do 3% this time. We'll give them the benefit.
3%, is that your final answer?
I'll say 1%.
I think it was 1.6.
You're all wrong. You're all wrong. It's 0.76%.
Seriously?
Not even 1%.
Are you looking at the overall, or are you looking at DX12?
I'm looking at the Steam hardware survey for March 2020. So this is everyone's. So and Steam isn't perfect, but like it's all like Pascal at the top basically. And the top Turing card is the 2060 at like 2.71%.
I'll also make a point though. The Steam hardware survey only ever seems to come up when I'm benchmarking APUs. It's hilarious.
It's luck based. It's luck based. It has nothing to do with that.
It's so funny because I've gotten it twice on my primary system in my entire life.
You want to know what I do? I actually have the checkbox unchecked, so I don't participate in the Steam survey, and a lot of people that probably have these equipment in their computer probably do the same.
I am surprised that the 2080 Ti has such a low market share. I mean, the 1080 Ti is still sitting at 1.58. I mean, okay, the 1080 Ti was a great value.
It's $1,100.
Yeah, I guess it's really expensive. GPU.
It's rent. That's a lot of people's rental for their apartments or mortgages. Like it's a lot of money.
So this methodology based on, this is the most popular, it really falls apart when you consider that they did use a 2080 Ti. If they were committing to this kind of methodology all the way through, they would have used a 2060 because that's the most popular GPU.
It's like I said, the whole thing has been kind of contrived, yeah? I disagree with Kirk on the memory thing because it's massively overclocked and even more overclocked on the Intel system. Because you know that Ryzen Zen 2 is 3200 megahertz memory controller, but it's like 2667 for the 9900K. Overclocking the memory this far, you're overclocking the Intel CPU further. And yeah, Alex made the argument that people buying these machines would be buying the faster memory, possibly going to be overclocking it. And then I made the counter argument of, but would they actually be doing this at 1080p? 1080p for a 2080 Ti? I just don't see it.
I mean, maybe if you really want to RTX on.
I was running a 1080p monitor up until I bought that Acer that I put a review on our website for. And that was my first 1440p gaming monitor at my house. So there are people that do use like the 1080 Ti like myself with a 1080p monitor. It happens.
Well, there are people, yeah.
But to play devil's advocate with you, Kirk, you knew what you were doing, didn't you?
Well,
Yeah,
of course.
that's a good
I
point.
needed something to give me the FPS in a very particular circumstance, and so the only thing I could do is run at 1080p to get that, even with the 1080 Ti, because I wanted my minimums to be above 60.
I had a friend who bought a 980 from somebody on Craigslist for like $200, and he had a kind of crappy quad-core i5, and he knew what he was doing, and he waited to upgrade it into a nicer system. So, I mean, he also knew what he was getting into by dealing with that.
Yeah, if you make informed decisions, then it's great. You can do a piecemeal upgrade process, things like that.
But I would never test that situation because that's just absurd. And I think everybody that's aware would not.
Would not actually run a system like that.
Unless I was proving a point that this is bad.
Proving a point may well be the whole point of this whole benchmark, Alex. I think you've got a point there when you say that. I did mention that the whole thing looks a little bit contrived. I mean, you've got the fastest graphics card money can buy. You run it at 1080p just to show the CPU bottleneck as much as possible. You've got the overclocked memory, which, as far as I'm concerned, should help Coffee Lake more. But you'll actually look at the whole chart at the end. I mean, the 3950X wins 6, and there's a few draws, and then it's all about 5-6% until you get to maybe 4 or 5 titles towards the end, where the Intel CPU wins massively. In all honesty, given how contrived that this whole thing looks, it kind of looks good for the 3950X. I mean, that's the way I see it, yeah? Apart from the fact that obviously it's a very expensive processor.
Well, here's the thing. They could have just stuck a 3800X in this thing and got the same result.
It would have been the same result practically, wouldn't it?
Yeah, they went with the 3950X because it's the top of the line, of course, but it's also more expensive than the Intel offering. And so they could put in their conclusion, and they did, that because of the price, Intel is a better choice, even though they did contrive a higher priced CPU.
Well, if you were arguing price, then really what it should be is 9700K.
3700X or something.
3700X, yeah.
Yeah.
If you were arguing a price to performance, that would be...
And that would have been a more interesting one. But this is Intel. They're doing what they can to make their parts look as good as they can. I can't blame them for that. I'm not going to blame legit reviews for this either.
No, I don't.
No, they were probably doing what they were asked to do, and they fulfilled that to a T, and that's fine. And they even put the disclaimer at the very beginning that they are running an Intel sponsored. So they did pretty good in that regard.
Which, if you are an educated adult who knows how to put 2 and 2 together, you'll figure that this probably isn't the most unbiased thing in the world. And you should take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But if you look at the differences between the two CPUs, I mean, there is very slim differences between the two CPUs in general. If you look at the actual game performance one that shows FPS.
There's 1 or 2 games where the Intel CPU performs extremely well.
Yeah, but that's 600 FPS versus 750.
Exactly.
Who
cares? You're right.
Who
Yeah,
cares?
750 versus 550. Yeah.
The thing they also didn't say is that this 3950 could be streaming all of this to Twitch at the same time and not bottleneck itself.
Probably, yeah.
To be totally fair, the 9900K or KS would probably do a good fair bit of those games and stream and not be bothered.
Yeah, I think it would.
A
I
lot
think it
of
would.
them. It's so
Well,
overkill for some of
TF2,
them.
Rocket League, Terraria. Oh yeah, those are very, very difficult games.
I just want to point out also that, the 9900K is the faster gaming CPU. I have pointed that out many times. There's no getting away from it, it's just faster.
But most of the time it doesn't become a big deal. If you're gaming
you're correct. Yeah, you're right.
Rational resolution with a GPU that makes sense.
I mean, we talked about it, how you can sort of contrive and prove a point. That's fine. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. They go ahead and they do what they did. They get paid for it. What I don't agree with, what I'm not happy about, is closed comments. I mean, if you're going to do something like this, then, you've got to keep the comments open and let people say what they want. Because, and look, don't get me wrong, I already know that this would have been filled with AMD fanboys giving Nathan a bunch of shit, But, and it would have been. But you got to leave your comments open, otherwise it's not a good look.
No, it never looks good. In other types of tech journalism, I've always hated people shutting down comments.
Yeah, if you look through the rest of there's many other reviews and stuff, and the comments are not shut down, but the comments were shut down in this one, and this is something that I don't agree with. But apart from that, he's right to do it. I would take Intel's money and make a good case for them as well. Put it that way. Yeah, and these guys,
Let the hardware speak for itself. That's what it is.
yeah, basically. I mean, this is all about, what he said was, the data's there. I don't believe for a minute he's fudged anything or anything like that. Yeah, the data's there.
Yeah, no.
And he's put in a ton of work to provide this thing that a lot of people wanted to see.
I would not be surprised if he put 60 hours of work into this.
He said
not.
hundreds, I
easy.
think it said. Hundreds of
Yeah,
hours.
Yeah, that's not surprising either. Especially
Easily,
if you're
yeah.
coming through how to
The one
benchmark
thing that
stuff.
we would have liked to see out of this would have been the 99 percentiles.
Yeah.
See what the dips are, because that's really going to be more the function of the CPU, is if it can keep the GPU loaded.
Yep.
And when you get those dips, that's a failure in the fabric underneath the CPU, passing information to the GPU, getting stuff from RAM, that kind of stuff. So that's the important metric that is missing in this review.
I just want to say it pains me to say this about this review because obviously it took a long time to do this, but I think a lot of these data points are useless just because of the way the methodology is. And it pains me to say that because I know how hard it is to test this stuff, but I really think that I could go through pretty much every single one of these one by one and explain if it's good or bad and why. I could literally do that, and I think we'd end up with like 10, 20 good data points. Like in terms of like not only practicality but also use and whether or not it applies to the real world and whether or not it tells us something about these parts.
We know that Intel's all about real world benchmarking, though.
Yeah. Do you want me to do that? Do you want me to get real world?
So, I mean, to be fair, I sometimes like to see the best of the best shootout thing. But you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and then say, this is also, you could get similar performance with the cheaper parts.
Yeah.
If you're worried about budget. I think it's a bit unfair to put it in that position.
For me, the big thing here is that even with everything kind of stacked in Intel's favour, the 9900K was only 5.5% faster overall on average over the 3950X. And you do get into that point where you're saying, is it worth the 99? You look at these benchmarks, would you choose the 9900K or the 3950X? I guess based on price, you would take the 9900K, but if price was a factor, then you would probably not take the
You're looking at
9900K
something
anyway.
else.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you got a
Looking at something
2080 Ti, price is not a factor, and
Yeah,
the
2080 Ti,
3950X will be longer in the tooth than the 9900K. You'll have 4
Yeah.
extra cores, 8 extra threads. Actually, no, it's 16, so double.
Yeah, it's 16. Yeah,
Yeah.
you
I don't
double
even
the
mind
course.
that they use the 2080 Ti. I don't even mind that. That's not what I take issue with.
So I think that he did do a lot of testing in this, and the way that he tested, I don't think he fudged the numbers.
No,
I
not
think
at all.
again,
No.
which
No.
some people have said. I've saw some of the comments on Reddit of people saying stuff like that, and no, like honestly, it's too hard to fudge the numbers. Legitimately,
data
the
is
numbers
real.
are too
Data
hard
is
to
real.
fudge.
Yeah.
I just think they're useless in a lot of times.
Yeah.
Like human fall flat.
If you're looking at buying a 3700X, these numbers are useless because you can't pull it down from the 3950X, the 9900K, and apply that to an i3 or a Ryzen 5 kind of stuff.
So a friend of mine did something that was like this a couple years ago. Well, actually, your GPU editor, Donnie,
Yeah.
who hasn't wrote anything in a little while. He's
A little while.
he did one of the earlier pieces he did was he got I forget the name of the processor, but it was Intel's first 8-core processor.
5960.
Yeah, it was the
5960. Yeah, you're right, Matthew. Yeah.
And then he took a Bulldozer 8350 and he put it up against each other in a bunch of games. And he tested with two 970s in SLI because that's what he had, and then he did single GPU tests. And he tested most games at, I think it was 1080p, 1440p, and then 4K for the SLI cards. And the whole purpose of that article was literally just to illustrate that people who buy an 8-core CPU to game on in 2015, 2016 were wrong.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the only purpose, was that the $1,000 CPU does not matter
No.
in a gaming situation at that point. And it was a total waste of money. You could buy this thing that everybody says is bad and is horrible for gaming and is terrible. And at 4K, it's fine.
Yeah, because the graphics is the bottleneck.
And a lot of people in the comments got very mad at us. People yelled at us. They were mad at him. But they yelled at him in all sorts of different forums and different places. Our little website was the talk of the internet for about a good 2-3 weeks. And it's kind of funny because most people miss the point. But, again, a lot of people looked at it like you're hating on Intel and most people wouldn't do that. And it's like, you don't know. But it's not really what he was doing here. I don't think, again, it was a sponsored piece, so he was putting the data together to give Intel a better case.
Yeah.
Or he was given guidelines.
Not doing it to AMD is not a good idea.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that was a sponsored piece, so until now.
But yeah, no, the piece that he did was literally just to illustrate that point. And that was not a sponsored piece. I don't know if that...
Oh, yours wasn't a sponsored piece?
No,
Sorry.
his
Right, okay.
Donnie's piece was not a sponsored piece.
Right, sorry,
I've never done any sponsored work, or neither do I think Donnie has.
Right, okay.
I would, though, if you guys want to, give me all the money.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I always joke that people in the comments are waiting for AMD to give me a Ferrari, but they haven't yet, so...
Me too.
I did a similar thing with my 8-core analysis, where I said, okay, well, you don't... It's sort of in the opposite direction. Instead of more cores, it's about single-threaded performance. But I was like, well, the 1700 is almost as fast as the 3700X in gaming. So it's like, it's not that much slower. If you're rocking a 1700, going to a 3700X is almost pointless.
I don't know if it's pointless. It depends on the use case and
Very
how much you
niche.
care. And
If you're an esports player, then you should absolutely upgrade, because the 1700 is trash in esports. But if you're doing anything else, it's totally fine.
I've been on a 1700, I've been on a 2700X, I've been on now the 3900X, and I could feel at each and every upgrade.
Seriously?
I couldn't feel the upgrade from 1700 to 2700. I couldn't do it from 2700 to 3600. I just haven't been impacted by it at all. I think CPU upgrades are totally overrated, unless you're like really bottlenecked.
I think it's a workload thing then.
I had a 2700X before I got this 3950X, and it was one of my Patreon guys bought me this 3950X.
What the
oh
hell?
wow,
Yeah,
let's
nice.
do a shout out for him. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Guy from Sweden, in fact, I'm not going to mention him by name. He'd actually contacted me via email and said, "Could I buy you a one-off gift?" And I actually get this a lot. This is one of the perks, I guess, of being a YouTuber. Yeah, I get a lot of people just offering me hardware. I mean, one guy wanted to buy me a 2080 Ti. Another guy wanted to buy me a 1080 Ti. Another one offered to buy me a Radeon 7. And
oh wow,
I turn it all down. I always turn it down. But this time, this guy, the Swedish guy, got back to me again and said, I told him, I said, look, I've got no requirement for a 3950X, really. Yeah, I've got a 2700X. It's absolutely fine. I've got the Radeon 7 and I am happy with this system. But he got back to me saying, I made a lot of money on buying AMD stock because of your videos. Yeah, and I thought, okay then, if you've made that kind of money on my videos, then I am going to accept your gift of a 3950X. So I did, and I said, yeah, I'll take it. And I don't notice the difference in gaming, but when I'm editing video, yeah, there's a big difference. It's something, I don't know what it is exactly, but it is way snappier. There's something about it that's just that bit snappier, and the responsiveness is a long way ahead of my 2700X. But regarding gaming...
You like your render time?
Render time, not really, because in actual fact, Handbrake is kind of capped out at 8 cores anyway, yeah? Or 12 threads or something. So I don't see a huge difference in that. You can make it. I mean, if you crunch it enough...
I demonstrated that cap in my reviews for the Threadripper. You can see very clearly how it doesn't really gain much above those cores, because I did VMs that limited those number of cores given Handbrake.
Oh yeah, no, it won't. It won't.
When you run 4 VMs concurrently on the same system, all running Handbrake, doing 4K, it definitely gives you a very good boost.
Yes, I think so as well. Yeah, I could probably do that. I mean, there's a time back in when I was doing the gaming videos, the Elite, I would be releasing maybe 2-3 videos per day. I was
what the hell?
Yeah, I was doing that. Yeah, while I was gaming, I was simply playing and recording and editing videos all day. If I were doing that, then yeah, it would certainly help to have these extra cores. But I mean, 3950X, it's an absolute beast of a CPU, obviously, and I do notice a difference in the editing process, but it's more of a snappier thing. It's not like the throughput thing that you might imagine. It's all about the how snappy it is, and we already know Zen 2 is a better architecture than Zen 1.
And just reflect, when Ryzen first came out, we were dealing with Xeons with 18 cores. And now we have a desktop CPU in, 5 years time, 4 years time,
Yeah.
that it's 16 cores and outperforms those Xeons of yesteryear.
Yeah.
I mean, it is crazy how much performance we now have to the end user, not just to data center with 64 core ROMs.
I'll also make this argument for the kind of people who would buy the higher end stuff. I have a friend of mine who's pretty comfortable financially, and he legitimately just does not like upgrading hardware.
Yeah, I know people like that as well.
He's like, it's not worth the headache and the troubleshooting and the problems, and he hates that part of the whole, gaming computer stuff. He just hates doing it.
So he just buys a new computer every 4 years or something. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, there's a lot of people like that.
He bought an Intel 6700K, and he called me one day when he was playing, I think it was Monster Hunter, and he said, my frame rates are just dropping to 30, and I don't understand this. He's like, I overclocked the thing, I overclocked my GPU, and it doesn't matter. And he's saying that it's, endgame raid boss stuff. And I'm like, oh, that game's pretty core hungry. And I guess, you're getting frame drops because of that in the really intense parts.
Yeah, 4 cores just not cutting it.
Yep. So he, with my advice, he bought a 2600 temporarily and an Asus board, which actually gave him trouble. It's a very famous board that people tend to buy a lot and had complained a lot about.
Is this the Crosshair?
The Crosshair
7?
6, was it? I was going to say 7.
Hey,
The X470 Crosshair. The Crosshair.
Yes,
yeah.
that's the one I used to have, and it killed
Yeah.
its LAN port, so I couldn't use it anymore. I had to return it.
But yeah, so he bought that board because he's a big Asus guy. Not anymore, apparently.
Let's hold on. This is the reason why you don't fanboy over any particular manufacturer. Just saying.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
it happens.
between generations, like you know what happened with the MSI boards on the X570, but
Yep.
between generations, the arguably best hardware can shift between manufacturers.
Oh yeah,
for
Gigabyte
sure.
can have great years, Asus can have great years, MSI can have great years.
Like, listen, Asus made the G14, but they also made the 5700s that didn't have any, and they didn't even know what cooler pressure was. And they also made a bunch of other boards that with like terrible VRMs. So.
I'm going to be honest with you, Asus, if you're listening to this, I really do want an Impact ITX board. Please send one.
Don't they have? Don't. You might have to spend your own money, buddy.
All of the
know.
viewers need to go tweet against Asus to get Alex one of those boards, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Alex, but you better
listen.
get writing. You better start writing real quick.
Yeah, start writing
I
some
know.
favorable articles or something. Wink, wink.
Hey. I do
Maybe get
favorable
something
when the content
sponsored
is
by
good.
Asus. Yeah, that'd be
There you
pretty
go.
nice.
Hey, while we're asking for stuff, I do need some RAM for my test bench. Right now, I'm borrowing some Corsair Vengeance RAM for the test bench so that it would fit underneath this Arctic cooler that I reviewed. But I'm open to getting any kind of RAM that people are willing to throw at me so I can have it nice and center in my pretty pictures. You've seen my pretty pictures of my sockets always have the RAM blazoned right there.
There's no chance we would ever sell out, guys. You know that. This is just not true.
We're saying most of this in jest, but I'm sure none of us would bat an eye about reviewing any of this equipment, Just saying.
I don't know, like I said, if Intel wants to throw money at me, then I would probably give them a favourable article as well.
Listen, the amount that it would take to buy me is way too high that it would ever make sense for any of the companies to ever do it.
You mean that Ferrari you keep talking about?
Yeah, that's Ferrari,
I'm not worth a Ferrari. I'm not. Like, let's just be honest here, guys. I'm not worth a Ferrari.
Maybe like $100.
No, definitely not.
I don't want a Ferrari. I'll go with a GTR personally. I've driven one. Those are sweet cars.
Anyways, to finish that story, for my friend, it's not worth it to him to really worry about the value of stuff. And for him, if it's like it'll stop him from doing a build for 4 to 6 years, and he doesn't have to, literally something he told me, do I have to take the CPU out of the socket? So for him, to not have to take the CPU out of the socket and reapply thermal paste, it's not worth it.
It's a
to him.
massive thing for some people. Yeah, they would rather just go and buy a new PC.
Yeah, so the 3950X would be a good alternative for him.
He got a 3900X because he didn't want to wait 2 months for the 3950X. That's legitimately the kind of person that I'm
least
talking
he
about.
upgraded to AMD and not Intel this time, though, so...
Oh, yeah, no. He said, I learned my lesson. He's like, you're right about the Ryzen, and these things look really cool.
Yeah.
By the way, I hate to interrupt, but I
Go
don't
ahead.
think this is half an hour anymore.
No, it's probably not.
Oh no, we're
All of
we're
our
over.
stuff is a half an hour, Matthew. Come on. We
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
we
Yes,
start
yes.
out of the podcast. We
It's
plan
always
on a
half an
half
hour.
an hour podcast.
Yes.
We get the material for half an hour, and we run for
Yes.
half an hour. That's all
Yep.
there is to it.
Yeah.
We just dropped a half an hour somewhere.
And by the magical power of editing, Kirk will manage to somehow get this down to around 40 minutes again.
Man,
But,
Kirk, you're great. Thank you
yeah.
so much.
I had
Kirk.
to throw 20 minutes out of the last podcast, guys.
You're
20
probably going to have to
minutes.
throw 40 minutes out of this one, I think. Let's call it now, I think, and we'll move on and let's just call it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we're gonna get a lot of feedback from the comment section about how much they hate or like me, which I look forward to.
Yeah.
Don't
Of
no,
course.
Alex. Don't worry. Listen. The last podcast, I only got one hate comment.
Yeah, it's
Oh
improving.
wow.
If you're just in here for like 5 episodes, you'll be fine.
Okay, I'm looking forward
Should we
to
put
it.
Alex to task and ask him some questions like Aurelian did on the last one?
Do it.
Wait, just don't talk about the consoles.
What I want to end with is Aurelian sadly is having some kind of issue connecting to Discord, and so there is no question and answers tonight, but hopefully we'll get that for the next one.
Oh wait.
Oh yeah.
We
That's
totally
right.
forgot about the podcast questions Discord channel.
Yeah,
Oh,
we'll
yeah.
figure that one out next week as well then. I think.
Okay. There's nothing new in there anyways.
There was nothing new that I could see.
Should we end with a couple of questions to Alex then? So, how many computers do you have in your apartment or house?
So do I count the ones that I own or other people in my household use?
I'm sure you've given them most of the other computers from your old
Yep.
builds, so let's count them in as well.
So there are two desktops I have running now, 3 the system. So there's 4 desktops and 2 laptops in this house.
How many are Intel and how many are AMD?
Oh yeah, there you go. Intel and AMD, and then how many monitors?
So there is Intel hardware that's sitting in boxes that I'm not using right now. One of the computers are Intel powered, the rest are AMD. Partially that's because of the amount of old review hardware that I have from AMD that just kind of serve the purpose properly.
Well, you do GPU and CPU reviews, so I'm sure you have a little bit laying around.
Yep.
Yeah, Alex, question for you. If a CPU is not Renoir, can it be interesting, and why or why not?
I think all products are interesting if they come at the
That's
right
wrong.
price
I'm
point.
sorry. We're not friends anymore. Not Renoir, not
Matthew
interesting.
wonders why he gets so much hate. Yeah, there you go.
Not Renoir, not interesting.
Let's go for a really
That's how it
polarizing
is.
question.
Go for it.
Coke or Pepsi?
Oh man, I mean,
Like as a brand in general, even if you have to.
no. I mean, there are some flavored Pepsis that I like, but Coke, all the way.
Yeah. No, we're friends again. We're friends again.
Yep. Yeah, we've already kicked Jim out of the club.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Jim. This is our
I get
website
it.
now.
I get it. I've got some relatives that prefer Coke. I don't or Pepsi. I don't understand why, but they do.
And if you could be CEO of any of these 3 companies, which is it, Intel, AMD, or NVIDIA?
Nvidia, because I'd get to wear cool leather jackets.
Hey, yeah, that's a good answer.
I like
Yeah,
that.
that's a good answer. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys for joining us. We'll wrap it up here. Be sure to go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, comment, all that usual SEO stuff. So definitely help us out with that. And stay tuned for the next one. We'll see you later.
Catch you later, guys.